Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. You are here in the right place if you're here for the Queer Ancestors Project panel for the artists called Queer Ancestors Project Resists. You're in the right place. If you're here for anything else, that's down the hall on the left. Hi, I'm Anand Kalra. I'm the Executive Director of Queer Cultural Center. We present the National Queer Arts Festival every year. This year is the 26th annual. We're very excited to have Queer Ancestors Project be part of the festival this year. And there's a lot of other things for you to catch up on as well that you haven't missed yet if you're watching right now during the live stream and it's June 2023. This weekend on Friday night, June 16th, we've got And Seeking. That is a collaboration of Oyster Knife, which is Chibueze Crouch, and Gabrielle Christian. And they are going to be at Grace Cathedral in San Francisco. Show starts at 8 p.m. Haptic tour at 7 p.m. Blind and visually impaired audience members are encouraged to attend as we have live audio description of this dance and vocal performance. June 17th is Mighty Real, a sketch variety show, which is going to be at Somarts, 934 Brandon Street at 7 p.m., I believe, on Saturday the 17th. But don't take my word for it. Double check all these details at queerculturalcenter.org. Lots more stuff coming up for you the rest of the month. Thank you again for being here. Slate and I are going to go and watch the rest of this panel. So what you're going to see tonight is the Queer Ancestors Project, which is devoted to forging sturdy relationships between queer and trans people and our ancestors. Using history as a linchpin, we build community through free interdisciplinary workshops in printmaking, writing, and queer and trans history for creators ages 18 to 26. So tonight you're going to see some of the artists from Queer Ancestors Project in a panel where they will share their experiences connecting with queer and trans ancestors and creating prints that envision ways to a world with justice, peace, and joy. Plus, they are going to show you a live linocut demo. Thank you for being here again, and we hope to see you at other NQAF, or NCOF as I like to say it, events soon in the future.
Welcome to the Queer Ancestors Project Resists Artist Panel. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to thank everyone at the Queer Cultural Center for inviting us to be part of the National Queer Arts Festival. But most of all, I want to thank the artists. Working with you all has been a truly amazing experience. It's been really deep and profound. It's been really inspiring to me. And it's also been super, super joyful. I want to honor you for the courage you brought to the work you created, the courage to be vulnerable, to go deeply into emotion and ancestry and fear, and also hope. I want to honor you for the dedication and persistence you brought to creating prints together. And I want to honor you for the open hearts, the sweetness, and the intention that you brought to creating community together. This is the very first ever Queer Ancestors Project workshop devoted not only to honoring ancestors, but also to creating prints about social change, to asking questions like, what does the world feel like to you? What has to change so you and those you love can bloom? What is the world that you want to see and feel and live in? And in addition to all of that, most of the artists you're about to hear from were also new to linocut printmaking. So I also want to honor you all for taking the plunge into learning a brand new medium, which, as you know, is no small thing. So Karishma Johnson made a short video about creating a linocut. So we're going to start with that. And the video features the printmakers that you're about to hear from. Extra special thanks to Karishma, the Queer Ancestors Project intern, for supporting us all in every possible way throughout the workshop, yes, and also for creating this video. Here it comes.
Come join the Queer Ancestors Project in the studio as we make some gorgeous linocut prints. Linocut prints are made by carving images into the surface of a material called linoleum. The carved away areas become white or the color of the paper, while the areas left behind become the color of the ink. Images are reversed in the process of printing, so we plan for this in advance by carving away the mirror image. Carving always takes a little longer than expected, but it's a wonderful way to spend time with the ancestors we're creating prints about. When we're ready to print, we prep our plates by trimming off the little fuzzies on the side. Inking can be a very exciting moment, the first big reveal after all the time we've spent carving. Inks can also be done in a range of colors. This gradient is called a rainbow roll. When we roll ink onto a plate, the ink lands on the areas we didn't carve away. And if we ink properly, it doesn't go into the carved out areas. Oftentimes, this moment is accompanied by cheers. Once we've got a well-inked plate, we're ready to print. We use soaked and blotted paper and place it on top of the linoleum. On the press, we gently cover it with a newsprint and blankets before rolling it through the press. Printing with a press is easy and gives us great embossment, as the pressure of the press and the blankets push the paper into the deeply carved grooves. The rotating wheel moves the press bed and does the hard work of transferring the ink onto the paper. Once it's through, we can peel back the blankets and newsprint for the grand reveal. We never really know what a print is going to look like until we print it, so there's always a moment of surprise here. How lovely. Prints can also be made with a variety of materials, including spoons. That takes a little longer, so let's enjoy these grand reveals in the meantime. Prints can also be done on a variety of materials, such as this lovely silky fabric that provides such movement. I think one of the best parts of our community is how we all get to show off our hard work to one another and cheer each other on. It looks like we're still rubbing. This is a precious way of spending even more time with your lino. This process ensures as much ink is transferred onto the paper as possible for a very saturated print. Here we have a fantastic double drop, which utilizes 4 plates to create this lovely imagery. This is another double drop that uses 4 plates and a rainbow roll all in one. How lovely. I think one of the best parts of our community is when we celebrate each other and our hard work. It's also super precious when we get to show off to one another. It's such a special moment when you have a new print like this. Amazing. And I think our spoon pressing is finally done. There aren't many second chances here, so once the paper is lifted up, it's hard to do any more rubbing. But all that hard work truly does pay off, doesn't it? And when we're done for the day, we can clean up our lino with some oil and cleaner. Thank you so much for joining us as we make some lovely prints. We're the Queer Ancestors Project. Check us out on our socials. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Queer Ancestors Project, or our website, queerancestorsproject.org. Special thanks to our creative director, Katie Gilmartin. We hope you learned something about printmaking today, and have a happy Pride.
I hope you enjoyed that great video and all the enthusiasm and cheering. I'm going to invite each of the artists to share just first your name and pronouns with us.
Sagri, they, them. Hi, y'all.
Hi, I'm Kaylee. I use she, her pronouns.
Hi, my name is Anna, and I also use she, her pronouns.
Hey, Karishma, I use any pronouns.
Hi, I'm James. I use he, him pronouns.
I'm Victoria. I use they, she, and Tom.
Hi, I'm Miguel. Any pronouns are fine.
Hi, my name is Brittany. I use they, she pronouns.
Sorry. Hi, I'm Yao, they, them.
Thanks, everyone. So the artists developed questions that they would like to answer for you. So the first one is, what has the Queer Ancestors Project meant to you? Sagri, would you like to start us off?
I would love to. That was, first off, that was an amazing video. I loved hearing my own laugh during it. I hope y'all got a sense of some of the joy and community that this workshop has brought us. I think art, especially for queer and trans people, is healing, is essential, is suicide prevention. And I also think that some of the most beautiful moments in this workshop have been when we're all moving together. Like last week, when during cleaning, we all sang to Frank Ocean's Self-Control as if in one voice. So this has meant really the opportunity to play and the opportunity to be together for me. Kaylee, what about you?
Yeah, so this workshop has been a really amazing experience, and I feel like connecting with everyone has been really just wonderful. I think for me, like the biggest thing about the workshop was the connection to queer history. I feel like I really was able to connect to historical events in what felt like a really personal way by making art about them. And by making that art, I think I've also been able to process some of the hurt and heaviness from the attacks that queer people are facing today. So yeah, it felt sort of like I've had permission to pull from examples of strength from the past to inform my art today. And I'll pass this on to Anna.
Thank you. I think a lot of the things that folks had shared earlier on really resonated with me. And in addition, I think QAP has been a space to envision imagined futures, imagined relationships with ancestors, and that's been really special to be able to get into that kind of headspace, to reflect on my history, my family's histories, and see the connections there. And so making prints with all of this in mind has been a big source of joy, and allowed me to build a learning community with the creative, talented, and just really wonderful and passionate folks in the QAP workshop. So that's been super appreciated. And passing it on to Karishma.
Oh, QAP has truly just been this magical experience for me, like just incredibly enriching, a great source of community. I found like a lot of lifelong friends here, and I'm so excited about that. But like just in the studio, I feel like we found like this lovely rhythm where we got to move around each other and support each other in different ways, learn from each other in the different aspects of ancestry that I wouldn't have been able to definitely learn on my own. You know, reading takes a long time sometimes. And so getting to get that collective knowledge and hear it and like the passion really just adds another layer to it for me. So QAP has really just like facilitated all this growth in my life around printmaking and friendships and the queer community. Bestie James, will you tell us how much QAP has meant for you?
Yeah, thanks, Karishma. So I just think QAP has been like a super accessible way to access queer history, which I feel like in the past has been sort of hard to come to or find. And so having like that dedicated space to learn and, you know, dedicate time to learning about it. And then even just bringing queerness into like the forefront of making art and my self-expression and identity and being able to, you know, explore it with these really interesting and creative people. We had like so many rich classroom discussions. Like, I don't know, you do most of the carving on your own time, right? And so a lot of the classroom meeting is really just getting into the topics and working through things. And so it was super helpful to tackle these big things with each other and support each other in the process. I will pass it to Victoria.
So the workshop itself was very fun and energizing for me. It was creative, and I feel like I learned a lot, and it was only occasionally stressful or frantic. It was very energizing to learn and practice printmaking in this wonderfully supportive community. And although only ancestry is in the name, I feel like we kind of touched upon queer past, present, and future, connecting back to culture and history through art, thinking about our present as creative individuals, and each of us like creating a piece of history. Miguel, what has QAP meant to you?
Thanks, Victoria. For me, QAP has meant a lot of different things. I think like something that has came up for me a lot is just having access to materials and also like space to be able to do printmaking, because let's be honest, like having a print press and like all the lino and all the carving tools can be pretty inaccessible. So to be able to do that for me is like really nice, and to see other queer and trans folks like also have access to that is super cool. And yeah, also just like has also meant for me like seeing like a future for like myself and like wanting to continue to do more lino stuff, and like I don't know, getting to meet other folks in the community, like the other folks in the class, and then also people that came and like spoke to our class. So yeah. And how about for you, Brittany? What has QAP meant for you?
Thanks, Miguel. I guess through QAP, my definition of ancestors has expanded, and my definition of an artist has been redefined. I think I still hesitate to call myself an artist, but as I was reminiscing over my brother's red egg party with my mom a couple weeks ago, I found out my grandfather planned out the whole menu that day. And in fact, he does this every time he goes out for a meal. When we go out to dim sum, he would write on his napkin, and then based on the characters and the ingredients, would organize it in the way in the directions of northwest, southeast. And to me, that was so poetic. And I never viewed my family members as artists or anything like that. But when I heard my mom retell me this story, I consider those almost like written love poems to the waiting staff and the chefs. To me, that is art, and what you take and what you see in the world and you rearrange it to create meaning. And so I think throughout the workshop, I drew a lot from my own experiences and the things I consumed through queer literature, music, film, and try to be more active about it. I come from a family of farmers, chefs, and restaurant owners, and they are artists in their own right. And there's this quote by Aja Monet, this contemporary poet, and it goes like, "May your hands be the extension of your heart, and may you do the work of love with them." And so for me, printmaking, the act of doing something with my hands, was really an extension of my heart and what has been on my mind for the last few years and decade, really. And so I thank QAP for allowing me to express things that has been in me, has been marinating in me, but didn't know how to get out. And I'll pass the question to Meow. What has QAP meant for you?
Thanks, Brittany. QAP has meant a lot to me. It's given me the opportunity to form a connection with my ancestors, specifically James Baldwin and his perspective on Black rage and how he sees it, how he deals with it. And it's given me the opportunity, like connecting with him and reading his work, like to connect with myself and my emotions and getting reconnected with art. So QAP has like had a great impact on like me coming back to terms with self and just giving me another medium and way, a form of expression, like to express like how I'm feeling, like, yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you all. That was really, really moving for me to hear. And so I'm really intrigued by this next question. What is the process of creating a print like for you, including when, where, how do you like to carve? Sagri, would you like to start us off?
I would be so happy to. So for what it's worth, I'm a poet. And for anyone who tells you poetry is hard work, know that in some ways they are lying. Like it's you and your little Google Doc and your own obsessions about punctuation. But to sit down with a piece of linocut and with your hands and your bones and your sweat, create something inspirational, beautiful, reflective, is a lot of work. I love carving while I'm watching television and letting Buffy the Vampire Slayer seep into my print. I love how fruitful it feels to finally put some ink on a plate and see what it's going to look like to the rest of the world. And I love the imaginative process of thinking through what images will really speak to folks, what images will actually convey the mess of feelings and angst and concepts that are in your head. So I, again, am really grateful for the opportunity to kind of play with an art form and mess up and have a ton of guidance from Katie and Karishma. That is a little bit about my process. On to excellent printmaker and human Kaylee.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so for me, creating a print starts with brainstorming ideas and doing thumbnail sketches. I think I probably did like 20 ideas and thumbnail sketches for the 4 prints I created this workshop. But yeah, from there, I like to do a pencil drawing where I like sketch out the proportions and composition and not really like worrying too much about erasing, just like getting things right. And then I've been blocking in the light and shadow using charcoal, which has been really helpful for linocut, because when I first like started this workshop, I was having a really hard time thinking in terms of like black and white, because obviously the ink is going to come out like a solid color. So instead of like thinking in like grays or like tones, like thinking about, okay, it's going to be black here, white here, white here. So yeah, drawing in charcoal was really helpful for that. And I've been using a rubber alternative to linoleum due to some carpal tunnel issues this spring. So I'm able to transfer the image to the block really easily by just putting my paper on top of it and rubbing the back of it. And that way, when I carve, the print ends up the right way without having to like think about it too much. So yeah, I don't know. For me, carving is really like mindless, but pretty satisfying. So I've been listening to a lot of true crime podcasts while doing it personally. And yeah, I think that pretty much summarizes my process. I feel like for me, the most exciting part is pulling the first print and just like seeing the image. It's so great. So yeah, I'll pass it on to Anna. Anna, what's the process of creating a print like for you?
So I too have been listening to the true crime podcast while making and carving my lino kit. I've also just been watching movies and shows, and usually it's at night, usually late into the night. I found that like doing this at home, like alone, usually like gives me the best like time for focus. So I'll just kind of be sitting and focusing for like long stretches of time, up to like 4 hours of just like doing this thing. And I find that like works the best for me. And then in terms of like creating like ideas for prints, I usually like to do like some research and then like mind mapping, and on a topic first. And then I'll start with like thumbnail sketches too on like what I'm hoping like a final format or like composition might look like. And oftentimes the end result is a lot more intricate than the original rough sketch is what I've noticed. And I think that's the end of my process. And so Karishma, what is your process like?
Oh, mine switches a lot, but I do have a favorite, so I'm going to tell you that one. I like to really get in the headspace of, I'm going to be carving today. I'm going to make a print. And I have this desk. I'm going to do a sin and like show you my desk. Actually, it's this giant wooden desk, and it makes me feel like a little artist, like, oh, wow, this is where I do my things. And it has like a light bulb and it's all warm and cozy. And I sit in the corner at home, and I like to be here, and I'll pull out like a heating pad. I also like to carve at like 4 a.m. That's like my favorite time. No one's bothering me. It's like super silent. It's just me, my lino, probably the birds because I like the window open. I like the little breeze to like come soothe me. But like when I'm doing this, it's really like a meditation, I think. My dada, when I was a kid, he used to like meditate every morning. He'd be like, and he'd be like doing his thing at like super early in the morning. And I was like, damn, that guy's crazy. But here I am doing a very similar thing of my own right. And he's actually the one who first taught me how to draw as a kid. So like maybe we're coming full circle here. But so when I'm doing that, it's very much like, okay, what is the lino telling me? I'll have like a rough sketch that I'm going off of, but I try and see, okay, how do I feel when I'm making this curve? What does it articulate when I do that? And I like to have music playing as well. Like I like it quiet, but I also like want something super loud right in my ears. And I try and like make it match whatever feeling I want to convey in the piece itself. So if it's like very energetic, I have a piece on Dykes on Bikes and I was listening to a lot of like 80s rock music, right? I was like, I want to feel sexy. I want this moment to be paused and imbued in here. And so I really only try and think about the piece itself when I'm carving it. And I think that's very crucial to like trying to pause and like imbue something and let it marinate for so long, especially when carving is such a time intensive process, you know? So like being able to sit with it, think about it, have the lino say, oh no, we actually don't want to turn that way, and like communicate back to me and like really sit with that and what I want and then what the lino is allowing me to do and have it become this like symphony of our conversation over those hours we got to spend together. Yeah, I think that's all I want to say about me printing and my little odd behaviors. I will say actually one more thing. It's an extra nice day if I get to have a little wake and bake and carving session with some nice little loud music. That's my favorite at 4:00 in the morning. I know it's crazy. Everyone tells me this, but it is my little moment that no one gets to interfere with. So James, will you pretty please tell us about what it's like when you're creating prints?
Yeah, thanks, Krishna. You said marinate, and I'll be the third person to say it today. I feel like a lot of the ideas that I was thinking about, it really took like a long time to get through them, and I thought that was a good word. So the process would kind of start with research, and this was, podcasts, movies, books, like looking into queer history, and then honestly just a lot of conversations with people. I just feel like I came to them with my like half-baked ideas, and I'm like, I'm thinking about this thing, like, what do you think? And then just coming back to those themes a few times. And so I probably spent at least half or more of the time on each of my prints drawing. And I think I was really trying to challenge myself to create scenes and be really deliberate about like where I was placing things and why and what was it communicating. So I did a lot of like test prints and new sketches and reorganized things just to see how it felt. And I think that was like really cool process. I would usually carve over the weekends and do it in like short bursts. I found it to be like pretty calming and like meditative, as Karishma said, and I made sure to have like the worst posture possible every time that I carved. And I would often like go to the coffee shop, shout out to my friends, my baristas at the Ritual on Haight Street who have my print up because I would carve there for hours in the beginning of the program. And then I would go to my friends' houses and be like, will you spend time with me for 4 hours, like while I do this in the background, and would teach a few of them how to carve as well. So it was fun to just put myself in social situations and bring my carving supplies with me. Victoria, what was your process like?
Yeah, it's interesting how James was saying carves with the worst posture ever, because when this question was posed to us, there was the one where how you like to carve, and it caused me to do a lot of reflecting on like how I would like to carve versus like how I'm actually carving. So I did want to start off my response with I would like to carve with good posture, and being mindful of my body and like short breaks and stuff like that. Whereas how I actually carve is, kind of hunched over, gradually more hunched over my plate. And sometimes my body physically hurts afterwards. So, like kind of like Sagari was saying, printmaking is taxing, it's hard work. Yeah, so those are habits I'm working on. And it's good to know that I'm not alone in that. Yeah. I also wanted to say that I'm not the most confident in my drawing skills, so I usually start off more with a concept or a layout and kind of figure it out as we're going along, kind of like Karishma was saying, in terms of like what does the lino want to be, figuring out how I might want to portray the ideas or feelings and how to carve and get the lino to cooperate with me as we do that. As far as the environment, it's interesting that a lot of us like to carve late at night because I feel like I like that too. It's nice to carve when the world is sleeping, but it's also nice to carve under sunshine. So I don't know what to do with that. And then making sure I have snacks and water. Yeah. And much like a lot of folks have already said, I feel like we spend a lot of time in the research, reflection, and ideating stage. Ideas and inspiration kind of come from everywhere, and have many unorganized piles of concepts that have yet to take physical form. Miguel, would you like to tell us about your process?
Yeah, thank you. I think when it comes to coming up with ideas for prints, the majority of my prints were like very personal in like personal history in my family. And so yeah, I definitely like with the ideas of like what we've talked about in class, it definitely brought up a lot of things for me, and to be honest, definitely a lot of like pain and confusion too. And I think like I talked with my dad a lot about things that I wanted to portray in the art, and I don't know, it's not always for me like butterflies and flowers and shit. Like it's like sometimes can be really heavy, but being able to like carve and like release the tensity from my body, like because like other forms of art that I've done isn't like as much like strength or like pushing something. It's like painting or like drawing, so it's cool to be able to like really use my body, I feel like, in that way. And yeah, I actually tend to paint here. I'm in my studio, and yeah, I always, or sorry, not paint, carve here, and do a lot of my drawings in here too. But yeah, recently for my last carving, I was like watching the new like Tupac docuseries, like Dear Mama, and yeah, just like reminiscing on like how like listening to like Tupac for me, being like a young kid and like going through a lot of shit, like it was really nice to have like to hear music that I resonated a lot with. And I don't know, definitely like he feels like, I don't know, he feels like an ancestor or something. Like he honestly, like I know he like never came out as queer or anything, but like just the way that like he like definitely like performed masculinity in different ways that were super normal, or like seen as normal, like really inspiring to me. So I like to like watch and listen to like people that have inspired me for a while, like while I carve. But yeah, and I will pass it to Brittany. What do you need to do your best carving? Where do you do your best carving? I want to hear.
Okay, I'll tell you, bestie. I think kind of the ideas, like how coming up with it, I think it comes or draws a lot from my conversations that I've had, that I want to have, that I imagine having, and then conversations I can never have. I draw it from podcasts, experiences, magazines. So during the idea phase, I would actually go to the Barnes and Nobles near my house and just take a bunch of magazines and just flip through it, like the Home and Garden or just some literary magazine to draw some inspiration. And then I would start like reading it at the Starbucks there. I mean, we're boycotting Starbucks now, but I would during the earlier months, I would spend so much time of my like idea making there. And it just became kind of a ritual, and I am a creature of habit. And so it was just like comforting to like have a place to do that was outside of my own home. For drawing, and I also tried drawing at a bar once. It's a conversation starter, but I did not get anything done. And the drawing was horrible. It might have had something to do with the drink, but I don't know. But on that note, in terms of carving and drawing ratio, it was interesting now reflecting back and having this conversation now. I think I spent so much time on the idea and drawing phase that actually near the end of QAP, I spent way more time carving, less time drawing and thinking about it, but I just spent hours and hours on the actual carving. And I think that was like a learning curve that I had to learn, because I just thought maybe if I, kind of conceptualized it in a drawing, it would help me later on. But actually, it's the carving that takes a lot of work. And sometimes it doesn't really translate as well. So that was a cool progression in my own work that I saw. In terms of setting the mood when I carve, I listen to all kinds of music, like from French rap to bossa nova to jazz ambient sounds. I think I blame my like Gemini moon sign for that. I also carve while lighting candles. And so shout out to my rose and clove candle. That brought a lot of comfort to me when I was carving. And I think when I carve, when I really need to concentrate on something, like this is an intricate detail, I'm like super focused and I'm sitting down. But other than that, I'm usually standing or moving around. So you can kind of see movement in my prints. I don't know if that's a good thing, but I just noticed that like when I'm trying to get something more detailed, I'm sitting down more. And when I want something more flowy, I find myself like standing up and moving. So yeah, that's kind of my process. And I'll pass the question on to Meow. What is the process of creating a print for you like?
Thanks, Brittany. The process for me is really starting with an emotion. I feel like the workshop and just the printing process, like I came with an emotion that needed to be processed, and really was seeking guidance when I was doing the research. So when I did James Baldwin, I was seeking like how did he find a healthy way to like process his rage, and then I would focus on like what I wanted that to look like. So yeah, so first I needed to process rage. I researched James Baldwin, and then I found this quote, "Don't let the rage consume you." And I feel like that was something that like really anchored the rage that I was like trying to channel in a healthy way and process. And then with my other print, I feel like that process was a little different. It was processing grief and in the moment as well, like trying to already holding the emotion, really trying to focus on like what that, trying to get that across in the image that I was trying to sketch out and draw. And then for my other print, that process was a little different. It was joy. So just like trying to find images through research and like what that looks like, what that felt like, and how I wanted that portrayed. When I am like printing, I like to like play some music. It really doesn't matter. I like all types of genres. And I like to sit down in my room and print mainly. I did a little printing at work too. And then, yeah, that's kind of like my process summed up. I think for me, like the best way in processing like the emotion with the printmaking is like when you finally roll it over on the print and then like you see like what it's made out to be, like with the ink on it, and like how I was able to like how proud I am and yeah, how I'm able to like process and show like what I'm holding and working through like through my art. So I really enjoyed the process and found it fun.
Thank you all. So intriguing to hear the sort of threads of similarities and differences in how you all work. So now for our last question, and I have to say this is my favorite question. I've been looking forward to this question. Please tell us about one of the prints that you created in the workshop. Sagri, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is, I hope y'all can see it. This is a print I made really thinking about sexual health and rights, which is something I'm really passionate about. And then as a writer by trade, I think a lot about artificial intelligence. It is so telling to me that in our social world and in who we trust to create robots that do our work for us, they're not trying to replace finance bros or, NFL athletes. They're like writers, artists, sex workers. Y'all, we can do without y'all. So this print is thinking about AI facial recognition and how often that technology is used to curb our sexual autonomy. I was specifically thinking about the databases that compile and recognize content of sex workers online, and in that way make them vulnerable to things like enforcement of messed up anti-sex work laws, but also things like detention and deportation at borders. As I was carving for this print, another article came out that discussed how AI was being used to target abortion protesters. And I believe that was in Los Angeles. Police are doing all kinds of things. So this print, which has my face on it, is really an attempt to contend with some of the grimmer consequences of artificial intelligence, of facial recognition technology, of the ways that we are being watched. Not to give y'all nightmares, but we are being watched. And I can't wait to hear from our next presenter, Kaylee, about her print.
Thanks. Yeah, so this print was inspired by the Lesbian Avengers, a group that was mostly active in the 90s. This print actually came out of wanting to find a way to process the violence and setbacks that queer people are facing right now. So over the past year, I've had some run-ins with homophobic and transphobic hate while putting on drag story times at the library where I work. And just that experience has made me feel really depressed about the general state of anti-queer legislation and anti-queer violence in this country. And so when I was doing research for this project, reading about the history of the Lesbian Avengers, it felt so familiar, and it made me so frustrated to see the things that they were protesting against in the early 90s, which was, almost 30 years ago now. So it feels like the violence that trans people in particular are still facing in this country, it feels like it hasn't gotten any better since then. But I was particularly struck by the fact that the Lesbian Avengers seemed interested in learning to process this violence as they responded to it. And so this image that I based the print on is from an action that they did in 1992. It was a 3-day anti-violence vigil in New York City in response to the murders of Hattie Mae Cohen's and Brian Mock. They were burned to death in their homes by white supremacists after being targeted and harassed for months in Salem, Oregon. So at the vigil, Lesbian Avengers ate fire and chanted, "The fire will not consume us. We take it and make it our own," in reference to the firebombing specifically. So I was also particularly struck by a photo that I saw that was at the vigil, that in the background you can see a sign that says "Justice for Marsha" in reference to the 1992 death and likely murder of Marsha P. Johnson, which was ruled a suicide by the NYPD, and they refused to investigate it further. So I can't help feeling like too little has changed in the years between 1992 and now, as white supremacist groups are emboldened and growing. But I wanted to make the connection between past and present because I think that this image really centers, remembering that there are ways to process the silence and respond to it, which can feel powerful and transformative, even though it's heavy. So I'll pass it on to Anna.
So this is probably the most personal of the prints that I made in the class, and just also had me revisiting like feelings and just my own personal history too. And so this print is about my paternal grandmother, and she passed away before I was born. And so I grew up without my father's side of the family, which made it difficult to have any kind of connection with or know anything about my paternal grandmother. And so creating this print helped me forge an imagined relationship with an ancestor who I might have been close to, like proud of, or been loved by. And I think that being in QAP pushed me to be able to be in that headspace to think of connections with ancestors in this way. And so the print kind of explores that. So the story I've been told, and one of the few things I know about her, is that she was leaving Vietnam on a refugee boat with my grandfather and my father. And their boat was attacked by Thai pirates, and she was unfortunately shot and killed during that experience. And this is my attempt at like honoring her and others that had lost their lives during the Vietnam War. And so you can see in the gravestone the years of the war. In her arms, there's the boat that I imagined she might have been on. And she has this big belly because of my recognition of her as being like a bearer of life and my like gratitude for her. And that's the story behind this print, and the grave, and my way of honoring her. And I will pass that this little baton to Karishma.
Hey, okay. So, I get so excited every time I see this print. I'm like, wow, I went crazy on it, huh? Thank you. I know there's pure silence for everyone else, but nice job at myself. Okay, so this print, I call it Get Tested all the time, but I did give it an additional name. It's called Drag Name Mike, aka Medical Industrial Complex. But this is like a character, not of anyone specific, but it's a play on this like sexy nurse character, and trying to convince people in a more queer-coded way to go out there and like get tested. As a disabled and queer person and trans person, I think it's very important to like acknowledge just the history of like disease and just how important it is as a marginalized community to go be proactive in your own health and your community's health. And so I kind of wanted to do this like, yeah, the sexy nurse, the slicked back hair, latex gloves, thigh-high boots, just like, oh, you should go get tested, like seduce you a little bit into doing it, but definitely in a more like queer drag fun way. I think it was kind of a miracle that I got this color combo in one day. When we print, we settle on 2 rollers. So this is like a black roller, and this is actually a rainbow roll. It was forest green to lime green, and it's a big plate. And I did some weird hacky things that other people did not like, where I turned the roller and only used one color. But I love these colors. Some people say it gives like Shigo from Kim Possible. I think it's just like black and like, I had a dog when I was younger for many years. He was like 20 years old. R.I.P. Harley, you will be missed. But he used to like have like these little bile vomit things like sometimes, and it was like this very acidic green. Sorry to be gross, but I think of that color and I actually really liked it, even though I was always like, oh my god, no baby, what's going on? And it was always just him like eating grass just on his walks. But I think of it as like a pukey green, my favorite color. And I think it's like just so wonderful that I got to print in these two colors that day. They were definitely like the colors I envisioned this print in, you know, just very like stark, big, bold letters. I like playing with letters a lot too, just different fonts. And so I ended up like circling through this in many renditions, like, okay, which parts do I want inverted and which parts do I not want? And trying to find like this delicate balance of, can you still read it? And then do you still like get to experience the words and the person as two separate entities, but also enjoy them together. And I'm actually really proud of this result. I think it's great. I have it on the back of his shirt. I hope many other people want it on the back of their shirts. I like it. I'm proud of myself. What can I say? But what can I say? I can tell you to please go get tested on anything that is relevant to you. COVID, still a thing. People, you can go get tested for that, especially if you are in very public gatherings. Stay safe this Pride Month, you know? HIV, AIDS, any sexual health. If you're out there rendezvousing, stay safe, friends. That's what I wish for you. Yeah, stay happy, stay healthy, go get tested. Yeah, that's about it. I'm proud of me. Thank you. James, I'm proud of you too. Please tell us about your print.
Thank you, Karishma. So this was my first print of the workshop, and I'm someone who's sort of like stuck in my head a lot, always thinking things through. And so this was a major exercise in nonverbal communication. And I think a lot of prints specifically like about resistance use words, and I was like, how much can I push images and really try to rely on that? And so it was a big challenge to try to think through, as someone with bad spatial reasoning, like the black and the white and the negative space. And so I also just set out in the workshop to make a print about like risk and pleasure. And so this print is called Showering in Space. And it's about sort of the creation of queer spaces and the rituals within them. And when I think about queer spaces, you know, it's like in cities and bars, cruising places, evidently showers. And I wanted to present this sort of like imagined view inside, if you could see a snapshot of it, like what might that look like? And when we think about like risk and pleasure, about like what can be communicated with our queerness, or what can we admit to, or what can we like state of our desires and how that changes over time, I thought this was like a really rich venue in which people are communicating desire or disinterest or, you know, lust or whatever, and how you navigate that pleasure and risk in that same space. And so the figures are like intentionally kind of anonymized, and, you know, this sort of like voyeuristic view where the viewer is kind of looking into it. And I think it portrays a lot of intimacy, and in some ways, and in other ways, like not a single figure is touching. And so I think that was like a big thing that I wanted to push. I also think it looks a little surreal, and the perspective is sort of intentionally off, and it's sort of because those spaces can be kind of surreal. And so to give that sense there. Yeah, that's my print. What about you, Victoria?
Alrighty, I'm gonna start this with, I got a low battery warning. So if I disappear, it's because technology failed me. Okay, so this print is a sort of personal act of personal resistance for myself. The backstory is, okay, so imagine yourself in a middle school art class. You're drawing a variety of different animals for some project. And I drew some Chinese dragons that were modeled on dragons that I had decorating my childhood home. I was really excited to share them. And when I shared them with my teacher, she asked me to use a reference. And at the time, this was very confusing to me because I had used a reference, and I just sort of thought, well, I guess my drawings need work. There was like the childlike thought process of my teacher must know everything, and my drawing isn't similar enough to the dragons at home. And it wasn't until many years later that I realized it was quite possible that my teacher had never seen Chinese dragons, that in her imagination, dragons were not long and fluid and graceful. So for me, this print is an act of personal resistance on behalf of my past self. Imagining, like, what if Medusa had dragons for hair? Maybe she was Chinese. And we're telling her story at the opera, and you see this mask that she's wearing when the curtains open, and it alludes to her connection to stone and to dragons. As a cultural note, in Chinese opera, the masks can evolve. They can change as the story progresses, or as the character grows, or as we learn more about the character. So with all of this print aims to expand upon the idea that mythical creatures aren't bound by someone else's views and preconceptions, and neither are we. With that, Miguel, would you share one of your prints?
Hi, yeah. So for my print, this was my first print for the class. And I chose to symbolize my dad, myself, and my grandpa, who my grandpa I never got to meet, due to colonial genocide and like just the war in El Salvador, that was US funded. So like I never got to meet him, but my dad does tell me like stories. And I think like one critique that my dad often has for like the connection that they did have was like his dad was often very like he did teach him a lot, but he was also very intense and very abusive in a lot of ways. And my dad had a really hard time with that growing up. And so I think like my dad like really tried his best with me. And like I'm really grateful for that. And like my dad, like I got my first like machete when I was 7. And so like I kind of like put it to like symbolize like I don't know, like that like being passed down, because my dad got his first when he was like 5, I think, from his dad, and like kind of just like passing it down. And like but also like I also wanted to make it like a cycle of like, you know, like I'm able to be myself, like my full queer self, not only like for like myself, but like also for like my dad and my grandpa to also be like their authentic selves. Even though like often like toxic masculinity and like a lot of different things can get in the way of that, but just like being able to lead an example to like my ancestors, especially men, that like that it's amazing to show many different like sides of ourselves and have fluidity. And yeah, the images in between are like they kind of look like rose thorns. It's like a tree that's very important to my family. It's like called a ceiba tree, and it's like there's a lot of indigenous stories that my great grandparents shared with my dad growing up about them, and so they're really special to me. And then the thing on the outside is our river in the homeland, that my dad told me a lot of stories about him fishing with his dad at. So yeah, thank you. And with that, I'll pass it off to Brittany.
So I still don't know how to talk about this print, and so it might come off not as polished, so I apologize. Um, it was it was kind of more inspired by the Lunar New Year shootings and just kind of the increasing gun violence that America has been experiencing. But instead of focusing on the gun aspect itself, I wanted to focus more on how do I display that grief and sadness. Because sometimes I think growing up in my own family, mental health was very stigmatized. Showing your emotions was also not something that I was comfortable with till then. And so I wanted to see what it would look like to have that display on faces that look like mine or similar to mine. And I also wanted to pay homage to how we usually honor our past ancestors in my family. We tend to celebrate death anniversaries. So we would have portraits of their faces. And I thought that would be nice to kind of attempt to do that for people within my community. I was doing a little bit of research on the Star Bottom Dance Studio, and for many older Asian Americans, this was kind of like a hub where they learned how to dance, they spent time together, they found joy and freedom in dancing. And the quote that I saw from the owner of the dance studio said, "We really create this place to help prolong their life and improve their health." And I think that really struck me because it was a place that was supposed to be very life-giving. And it's scary to be living in the era that we are, that going to places like dance studios or even ballrooms. I see similarities within that within the queer community, where spaces are shrinking and spaces that are safe for people are also shrinking. And so, yeah, it's just me attempting to convey those feelings. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to say about it other than I'm still thinking about what that means to me, especially since I personally really love to dance. And there's something about touch that was always grounding, always growing up. And so partner dances was something that I really, really enjoyed. And so I understand why maybe just projecting a little bit from my like grandparents, why a space like that would be appealing to them. I actually grew up with watching So You Think You Can Dance with my grandma. We don't speak the same, like it's hard to. And so dance was something we kind of bonded over. It's just something you can look and then really feel it in your body. So I was thinking more on that aspect as well. And yeah, that is my thing. I'll pass it on to Meow.
So this print is a visual representation of a poem I wrote. So my first introduction into art and getting comfortable with it was just processing the emotion that I was feeling at the time. It really did help me with healing. So I originally wrote the poem when my mom passed. It's called Mommy and Daddy Never Held Hands. And it's about the first time I realized that my mom was, leaving the earth and dying like for the first time. And so around the time we were working on our second print for the workshop is when the anniversary came up of her passing, and then Mother's Day, like 2 weeks after that, and then a week after that, the day I buried her. So this print came out of like processing like that processing grief. And I still remember like when I took it off the press and like how like it was a different way of processing and healing, and the way that it like hit differently than the poem did, like with the words. It's interesting like how both can be about the same thing, but like when actually read or looked at, like it's felt differently or taken and seen differently. And so The I love you is just a message to my mom. And really in the picture, I kind of wanted to convey like the heaviness, like the little person that's sitting on the bench is like the heaviness, the weight that like grief holds when you're processing it. And then just paying homage to like during their last days, like although my parents weren't really affectionate, like they did like show love in different ways, and definitely like during the end, like they were very affectionate towards another, but it was just like, you know, another sign. And yeah, just grateful like for this print, like the opportunity, like for the workshop, and like it really has given me like another way like to process like my emotions. And so for that, I'm grateful and excited like to continue more. But that's what that print means to me.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you all. So powerful to hear about your images. And again, I'm really grateful for how deep you've all been willing to go and into hard emotions, difficult emotions, really challenging emotions. And I think that was partly possible because of the way you all supported each other and were present with each other. So now I want to let our audience know, drum roll please. We have a brand new event coming up showcasing the work of these artists. It's called Under Pressure, and it's happening Sunday, July 23rd from 1 to 4 at Somarts. And you can bring a t-shirt or other fabric to the event, and you can choose one of the prints these artists have created and ask them to pretty please print it on your shirt, and they will do it, and it's free. And we'll also have a print sale with prints on paper and fabric and music and food, and it will be a blast. And it is limited capacity, the capacity of the artist to keep printing, so beware of that, and first come, first serve. And so please be sure to watch our socials for more details on that, because there are details you need to know. And on Instagram, we're Queer Ancestors Project. On Facebook, we're Q Ancestors Project. And our website is queerancestorsproject.org. We would love to see you there. And I also want you all to know that applications are open for our next Queer Ancestors Project workshop. So please go to queerancestorsproject.org for details. So thank you again. Thank you, artists. Thank you to our audience. And goodbye. Mwah.